Hey friends, thanks for joining me for my first vlog, I believe they call it, a verbal blog. Anyway, you'll notice this is pretty raw. I'm not gonna edit it. I'm sitting in front of my closet doors because it's the only quiet place in my house. But my hope and prayer is God can speak through me even in the rawest form possible. We are in the midst of COVID-19, and this week I'm starting a new series called COVID Questions, because I don't know about you, but man, this crisis has brought up a lot of big questions. The first question that I've been hearing is, why is God allowing this? Why doesn't he just take it away? I mean, that is a really good question. And then I think when we start asking those questions, it's really easy to kind of spiral down and start asking those really big questions like, God, why do you allow bad things to happen to good people? And I don't know about you, but it gets really personal really fast. And then I start asking questions. God, why did you allow this to happen to me? My daughter has started asking the why question. I think that it's finally sunk into my children as they found out they weren't going back to school. Especially my daughter, she loves school. She's in 5th grade. They make a really big deal about transitioning them into middle school, and she's gonna miss out on a lot because she's not going back to school. So the last couple nights, she's been sobbing and saying, Mom, why won't God take this coronavirus away? And I feel for her. This is a big transition for a 5th grader. And it's hard because no matter how I say it, my answer is never enough, and it's never satisfying because I don't know, honey, tends to be a pretty unsatisfying answer for people. I don't know about you, but I don't really find it very satisfying when someone says, I just don't know. So like I said, she is not the only person asking why in this crisis, nor is it the first crisis that has brought people to their knees, begging God to tell them why. I personally have been asking God why for a really, really, really long time. And as we do that, we are joining a chorus of people that have been asking God why since the beginning of time. There's a man named David in the Bible. You may or may not have heard of him. He was a man known as a man after God's own heart. He started off as a shepherd. He is known to kill Goliath with a slingshot and a stone. He wrote 73 of the Psalms and became a very beloved king. He was a big character in the Bible. But again and again and again in the Bible, we hear him cry out to God, say, God, why have you forsaken me? And this is the man, this is the king who becomes king, who is called a man after God's own heart. There's another guy named Job in the Bible, and I'm not going to go too much into Job. If you haven't read it, you should probably try it. But we hear Job in Job 7 cry out to God, and he says, will you never look away from me or let me alone for even an instant? If I have sinned, what have I done to you, God? O watcher of men, why have you made me your target? Have I become a burden to you? And again, Job is known and hailed as a man of God. So just to say, is that people have been asking these why questions for a long time. And these are 2 examples of many. We do not have to go very far into the Bible to hear people crying out to God saying, why? Why, God, why? And that question continues to echo in our hearts and minds today. After my liver transplant, if you're not so familiar with my story, you can go to my blog homepage and I kind of lay some of that out there. But when I was 18, my liver failed. Really suddenly, I went into a coma. My life changed very rapidly. And afterwards, I was consumed by the question, why? I was consumed by it. I felt like if I knew why God let this happen, then somehow I would be okay. Somehow it would make sense and I could move forward. And so I was consumed by understanding the why. So what would happen is that God would use me in someone's life. So an example would be that someone would have a chronic illness and I'd be able to encourage them. And I thought, okay, this is why. Okay, God, awesome. This is why it happened. But every time that happened, I felt disappointed because what would happen is that my pain that I experienced through this felt really felt disproportionate to the encouragement that I was able to give this person. So I found myself constantly seeking out this why and reaching for anything that seemed to make sense, that seemed to satisfy that longing in my heart to understand why God allowed this to happen. I pled with God. I begged him to tell me why. People had a lot of ideas why God would let that happen, but nothing satisfied that nagging longing in my heart. What about you? What is your why? Your questions are going to look different than mine. They may sound more like this. Why did you take my mom away? Why did he have to die so young? Why did I have to get cancer? Why can't I get pregnant when the deepest longing in my heart is to be a mom? Why does that person seem to have it so easy when everything around me feels so hard? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why me? And today the question that we're asking, or most of us are, is why can't you just take the coronavirus away? Most people I know have a why. And for some of us, what starts with an innocent question of asking God why evolves into a consuming force that overtakes us, and it becomes a wedge between God and us. And this happened to me. So what happened to me is that I became consumed with why. Why, God, did you allow this to happen to me when I had followed you? I'd been faithful. I never drank. There was no problems. I had never had any indication that this was going to happen, and my life changed so fast. And I became so consumed with wanting to know why that my why became a blind spot for me. It created a wedge between me and God. And what would happen is, I don't know about you, but when I get into that space of that frantic, why is this happening? When I get to that place, I'm no longer really asking the question. I'm just angry. I'm frustrated. I'm fed up, and I don't actually want to listen anymore. I want the answer that I want, and I want it now. I want my pleas to be heard and my demands to be met, and I want it the way that I want it and when I want it. And then when I get to that place, I become blinded by my anger and frustration. And because of that, when we get to that place, we can no longer see what God has to say to us or what he has to show us, because we have allowed the why to become a blind spot in our life. Have you ever been there? Have you allowed your why to become the consuming force that has created a wedge between you and God? I've known a lot of people over the years that aren't following Jesus. And actually, I've never met one person that's not following Jesus because of Jesus. Most of the time, the people that I meet that aren't following Jesus because of an unanswered why. Something horrible happened to them as a child. They were abandoned, they were abused, they were adopted, they felt not cared for. As an adult, they felt neglected, their spouse left them, and as they cried out to God and why, when they asked God, why would you allow this to happen? They either didn't get the answer they want, or they felt like God was silent. And so because of that, that why became a blind spot, and it created a wedge that became greater and greater and greater, and they could no longer see the God that they once cried out to. I was blinded by my whys for about 16 years. I allowed my why become a barrier between me and the one who held the answers that I deeply, deeply wanted to seek and know. So we're gonna land here. This is really hard for me because I really like to wrap my blogs with something really encouraging and something nice and tidy. But today I just want you guys to sit in this, and I want us to ask 2 questions this week as we move forward. The first question is, what is your why? Maybe it's around the coronavirus. God, why are you allowing this to happen? Why aren't you stopping this? For some of us, we have bigger questions or different questions. Like I said, maybe it's about, hey, God, why did you allow my dad to die? Or why did you allow this to happen to me? Why me, God? I want us to sit in those questions and really think about those why questions. And then I want you to take some time and ask yourself, have I allowed those whys become a blind spot between me and God? Have I allowed those whys to create a wedge between me and the one who holds the answers to the questions that I seek? Like I said, it's really uncomfortable for me to sit there because I don't like loose ends, but I really encourage you, let's dig in this together. If you're interested in kind of processing this more throughout the week, make sure to subscribe to my blog, because each day this week, I'm going to be posting just thought prompts to keep us thinking, maybe what God is stirring in our heart, some thought prompts throughout the week about these whys and what that could mean for our relationship with God. But we need to start there. We need to get to the bottom of our whys and what it is doing and how it's creating a wedge between you, me, and God. So friends, thanks for joining me on this journey. Stay tuned. I can't wait to see what God has in store for us. I will see you next week.